Burns,
Yes.
Sharpton,
Yes.
King,
Here.
Holzer,
Here.
Bushos,
Here.
Lehman,
Here.
Powerhand,
Here.
Ogier,
Here.
Osborne,
Here.
Dahlberg.
Here. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge to the flag. Will you please bow your heads with me? Let us pray silently together, each one of us, according to our individual beliefs. Let us offer thanks for our food and blessings of our fellowship around us. Let us be a source of hope for those in need and contentment for those who are lonely. Let us give gratitude for our opportunity to serve Lewis County. Let the feelings of love, kindness, and a well-directed yet gentle spirit always be reflected in our actions. Please turn for pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The January 8th meeting minutes stand approved unless someone would like to make a correction. If not, they stand approved. Report of the Finance and Rules Committee per Rule 6, Carrie.
The Finance and Rules Committee has met. They recommend to waive the rules to act upon late resolutions this evening.
Need a motion to, made by Tom, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here that would like privilege of the floor? Yes, sir. Would you please come to the front and state your name, please?
My name is Justin Byer. I'm a longtime resident of Lewis County. I came here today to discuss the details of my proposition for deploying AEDs in Wildville businesses. More specifically, the higher traffic areas such as Walmart, Tops, and Tractor Supply. I believe the board and County Manager Mr. Peach have received a copy of my proposition. And I was wondering what the current consensus on that was.
I don't think we've really polled for a consensus at this point. What I would like to do is refer this back to the General Services Committee for further investigation, and we can have that discussion on the committee level. If you'll get together with Gary King and you can set up a time and a date in order to do that, that'd be okay, Jerry?
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine with you? Listen.
I did come prepared to explain a few other things. I am able to present something to about my proposition, if time permitting.
You have the floor, so.
Okay. Would you be able to use a slideshow?
How long is the slideshow?
Approximately 10 minutes.
I'm not sure we're really prepared for that. Can you do it in 5?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, come on up, Justin. AD presentation. Hold on. Here you go.
See the board and people can hear.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Justin Byer, and as stated, I'm a longtime resident of Lewis County, currently attending SUNY IT down in Utica. I came up here tonight to present my case and clarify my proposition to deploy automated external defibrillators in larger stores here in Lewis County. Now, I have noticed some people are not entirely aware of what AED units are. As far as AED units go, they are simplified versions of EMT defibrillator units meant to be used by people with reduced medical training, or it is possible to be used by people who do not have medical training. What they do is that in the case of a cardiac emergency, where someone's having a heart attack or any other event where their heart is not able to function properly, they deliver a shock to the patient, which is capable of restarting their heart and bringing them out of any episode. Now, cardiac emergencies, between 10 and 15 minutes, patients can't typically last longer than that, so rapid response is key to responding to an incident like this. Permanent damage or death can result if people go untreated longer after that. And though they aren't a permanent solution, they can buy emergency personnel vital time to respond to an incident. Now, my AED proposal outlines that I'm looking to install these units into large public shopping venues, not necessarily like smaller mom and pop stores, but larger areas that handle high volumes of customers. Now, facilities such as Walmart, Tops, and Tractor Supply, I believe, should be outfitted with these devices, given the amount of people they handle. Another thing I've heard about AEDs, a misconception, is that they can be replaced with CPR. That's not necessarily the case. While CPR is able to move good blood around a patient's body, it cannot bring them out of a cardiac emergency. AED units are effective at stopping the emergency, while CPR does damage control. Now, with typical CPR, the CDC has estimated that around 2 to 18% of patients can be removed from an episode from chest compressions and rescue breaths alone, while AED usage can increase that to over 80%. The statistics for Lewis County itself, as opposed to America as a whole, the CDC has estimated that around 1 in 4 deaths in America stem from some sort of cardiac emergency. The venue of which they arrive at the cardiac emergency can vary between hereditary conditions, reactions to different drugs, or there's quite a few others you could mention, but ultimately this cardiac emergency can be treated by an AED, usually no matter what venue they arrive to it at. Now, the current laws for AEDs, one of the bigger concerns I've heard is liability. If a business was coerced to obtain one of these units, that they would be put at a much greater risk as opposed to an individual. The biggest thing I found for businesses is that they have to have trained personnel always in the area, and that they subject their AED units to regular maintenance and inspections. Now, as far as having some authority involved with it, it does have to be overseen by a physician, someone, I don't know the exact, but the physician would have to double check, make sure the personnel are being trained properly, and that the AED unit is indeed getting its maintenance, upkeep inspections. Anytime a AED unit would be discharged, EMS and appropriate local emergency medical council would need to be notified of the use of it. And as stated before, the AED would need to be signed into a maintenance program if stationed at a business. That's a list of locations that are currently mandated to have AED units. A few are schools, health clubs, dental offices, state agencies, swimming facilities, and places of public gathering are mandated so far. But people who are not mandated, recreational facilities, office buildings, gyms, grocery stores, shopping malls, and public transportation. They can have them on a voluntary basis, but that's left entirely to them. There's no laws mandating the presence of them. Now, as far as these units go price-wise, a typical AED unit can go anywhere from $80 to $1,200. Now, depending on which model you get, some of the AED units are very straightforward. You just put the electrodes on the patient and activate it. It would determine whether or not they're in a cardiac emergency, and depending on what it reads, it may or may not fire. But the higher-end AED units, when you deploy them, it does have an onboard computer that will speak to you, guide you through the process, give you a metronome to keep your chest compressions and rescue breaths on track. And it's good to have that when you're panicking in an emergency situation. CPR masks, which is a staple for responding to these emergencies, are $5 to $8. Narcan is another product. I can go over that later. And then there's bleeding control kits, which is a supplement to an AED unit. Typically, the boxes in most other retail settings where they are mandated to have these, they have an AED unit and then a general kit to respond to other common emergencies. As far as maintenance goes, as stated before, businesses that are subject to having these units do have to have a maintenance schedule. And some of the costs associated to that is to replace the chest pads, the battery, and our cam if you have that in your kit. So shelf life for that typically lasts 2 to 4 years. As a summary, these units do not require extensive medical training. Almost anyone can use them. CPR alone, it's not enough to save someone's life. It can be used, but an AED is key in situations like that. They are not cost prohibitive. These units are very affordable. Even in here in Walpole, I believe we have the burglar fund to help people who would like to obtain one. 1 in 4 deaths are attributed to sudden cardiac death, where AEDs could be used effectively. And bottom line, these devices save lives. For now, does the board have any questions?
Is that something we can do at our committee meeting? Is that what you're thinking? When is that? That's the 3rd Tuesday?
Yep.
Yeah.
3rd Tuesday this month.
It's fine with me.
Randy?
Fine with me.
Yes, fine.
Thank you guys very much.
Can you make it
The 3rd Tuesday,
at 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock, I will make it.
Okay.
Good.
We'll get a hold of you, Justin, because we've had some talks about changing times.
Do you have my phone number?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like privilege of the floor?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, again,
Welcome, Sheriff.
good evening. I was just wondering, I spent down in Albany about 3 weeks ago at the Sheriff's Conference, and then I was down at the NISAC conference meeting also in regards to the legalization or recreational use of marijuana. I've been here before asking the board what the county intends to do, and I'm asking again tonight. I do know that there is an opt-out law that the board can adopt to opt out of the law that the governor is trying to pass. What that would do is that would allow for people to still walk about Lewis County and smoke the marijuana freely, but it wouldn't allow them to have any dispensaries in Lewis County to purchase that. And I just think that I'm advocating that I hope that maybe you might consider that. The downside, the only downside for that is, I don't consider it a downside, was that the county wouldn't then participate in 2% of the profits tax-wise brought in by the state of New York. That'd be the only thing that should be forfeiting is 2%. I think if we sell our youth out for 2%, it's a slap in the face to the young people in this county. The other thing I just wanted to mention was that we did have one of our correction officers pass away not too long ago after an operation, and it was due to a complication, and it was very sudden and unexpected, and we just want to let you know that some people in the community came, some others didn't. We appreciate those who did, and the family does too as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Sheriff, did they discuss at all, okay, and you had mentioned not have a law, the law not allowing the dispensaries, but did they discuss at all if the local municipalities or governments can pass a law that you can't even use it in their counties? Was that discussed at all? No, that wasn't.
Because, I mean, and I understand the 2%, I agree with you 100%, but if we're still allowing them to use it here, our medical costs, our mental health costs are still gonna go up in the county without, I mean, understand what I'm saying
Right,
here?
absolutely.
So, I mean, that's tough, so, but I agree with you, I don't think we should allow the dispensaries
I
here.
appreciate your
And it's a
consideration.
guaranteed thing they said next year anyway, so.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So.
It's a shame. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Anyone else like privilege of the floor?
I just want to dovetail to what the sheriff just asked. I guess for your information, so that you can make the best, most informed decision in regards to this going forward, I guess I'm looking to you as to what information could the sheriff and myself provide to you so that when it comes down to a decision being made, how could we help you with that? or think about it and let me know.
If I could jump in for a second, Pat, the legislation isn't finalized yet. It's still being worked on, and it'll continue to go through the chambers, the Assembly and the Senate. I think once we know what the decision is, we have to, what they're asking us to decide, then we need to analyze it at that point. Right now, it's still pretty nebulous, and I was at the NISAC presentation as well. Once it's an actual law and it's passed, and I agree with the sheriff, that's coming in 2020. That was the news from Albany, is that you can fully expect this. The form that it takes and the specific law, we're just not quite sure of yet. So maybe we can start preparing, but we've got to kind of wait for the state to move before we can start our our decision making.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else for coming to the floor? Now we'll move to presentations of communications and notices.
Put our item on, Mr. Chairman.
Reports of county officers and departments.
Yes, real property tax director Candy Aiken and treasurer Patty O'Brien have filed approved applications for 2018 and 2019 corrected tax rolls for property owners Michael and Amber Eisel, Donald Glenn, David and Brenda Green, Donald and Deborah Green, Daniel Prim, Mary Ann McGrath, Niagara Mohawk, E.S. Berkler and Son, Carol S. Marks, and Robert Ziegler. Legislators have received copies of the treasurer's January report, the January highway and solid waste audit reports, minutes of the January 16 Youth Bureau Advisory Board meeting, and 2018 annual reports from several county departments. James Richmeier's December and January Sealer Weights and Measures activity reports have been placed on file in my office. And that concludes reports.
Thanks, Sherry. Reports of outstanding committees. Ryan, Finance, Rules Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if there's much to report on, everyone was there. But our first new committee structure went well, I felt. What we had discussed, Joan and Patty had presented to us the foreclosure process here within the county. For the public to know, we had 20 foreclosures last year. I'm not just for sure what we're bound for this year yet. County clerk presented us a presentation about the building at the D.S. Verkler building. We had a consensus on the committee to move that forward. Tonight I do believe we have a resolution on that. The rest of the time was spent in the executive session on some contract or some discipline issues and other things, contracts. So, and I do have one motion to make, Mr. Chairman. I have a motion to authorize Treasurer Patty O'Brien to refill a full-time senior account clerk position due to a department transfer effective immediately.
Moved by Brian, second by Dick. Discussion?
It's an account clerk?
It's not a
Senior
senior
account
account clerk?
No,
Okay.
just
That was-
account clerk.
Okay.
Just account clerk?
Yeah.
Moved by Brian, second by Dick.
And that's in the budget.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Gary, General Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To start with, I've got a couple motions here. A motion to extend the highway department bids for bituminous oil and paver place surface treatment through 12/31/19, and for roadway marking, excuse me, to Seneca pavement markings through 3/31/20 in accordance with tabulated bid list on file with the clerk of the board. That's one of them.
Okay, moved by Jerry, second by Andrea. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
My second motion is to authorize the request for qualification, RFQ, for entities with qualifications for design, and estimated cost of engineering and environmental professional services of a new above or underground tank for motor fuel, storage displacement, dispensing system, and closure of the existing motor fuel storage system.
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion?
Did you say above and below, Sherry?
Or.
Either or.
Yeah,
We're gonna get a price of either way.
yeah.
I still think above is better way.
Well, that's probably what it is, but we just want to make sure.
And what's the closure piece?
That would be,
Of the old
taking
tank?
out the old and making sure
Gotcha.
that
Yeah.
the
Does that,
soil testing.
does that include the pumps too, Gary? 'Cause I remember I didn't see pumps listed.
Well, I've kind of heard that the pumps weren't included. I'm not sure we should if we're spending decent money on that
Absolutely.
instead of piecemealing it, because one of the questions is all these new meters and gauges gonna work with these old pumps?
Correct.
I know we spend money on the pumps to get them to work, but
Yeah.
we might be better off bidding the whole thing out.
Warren?
Warren, we had some discussion on the pumps. Can you just refresh our memory?
Yeah, a lot of the components in the pumps were replaced over the last 4 or 5 years. But I think, Jerry, we were talking about this, going out for this, request of qualification from the engineers. So we get information from them.
Yeah,
but
but
it's
have them
just-
look at the pumps too then, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll look at them, we'll, get their input and see what the cost-wise difference, and come up with what would be the best move in the end.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the RFQ has that's, when we put in the dispensing system, that's part of the pumping system.
Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The cat's out of the bag, we're working on the gas pumps right now, so that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jerry. Greg, Health and Human Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's gonna be short, because everybody was there. I visited all of them, I believe. We heard about the raise the age again. Now we have more of a price of, for 16-year-olds, if they can't be housed in our jail, 16 or 17. And that's $1,050 a day. That's if they can go to Jefferson County. If they can't go to Jefferson County, if they're full, then it's even higher. The other thing that was good news was the director of Veteran Services gave a report, and he has helped the veterans get benefits this year, equating to $1.352 million. And he has done an extraordinary job. He really does everything he can to help everybody, all the veterans. And that's the end of my report.
Any questions for Greg?
Yeah. Greg, you said $1,000 a day,
1,050.
$1,050?
Yeah.
Sheriff, we undercharging for bordering? What do we get, $120 a day to border inmates?
Around that.
Around that, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, and Ryan, you've been in on the discussions, is there more supervision with the 16 to 17-year-olds? There never was.
It's all about, in fact, at the conference, they showed us the guideline book for specialized secure detention, and I forget what the other one is, youth offender detention or whatever. They're each like this thick, so.
In other words, a state program.
Yeah, so.
The bail reform is gonna kill you also.
What's that, Sheriff?
The bail reform is gonna hurt us also.
Okay, thank you. Think about that one.
Thank you, Greg. Dick?
Yes.
Board representative for
Due
the hospital.
to the
board.
wonderful weather we had last Wednesday night, our board meeting was moved till tomorrow night, so we'll have a report on that. But we are selling our Valentine's Day candies again, chocolate covered cherries, the pretzels, which my personal favorite and stuff, so I recommend, you could pre-order, but you didn't have to. But I'd recommend get up there on the 14th of February and buy all you can. Starts at 9 o'clock, as Andrew said. And I'd like to yield a little of my time to Jerry, because he's here, and he may want to tell us about that money we didn't get.
Sure, I wasn't going to, but now that you opened that door. So, we weren't a recipient of the state transformation grant. That was a $16 million grant. There were 5 North Country facilities that received some money. 3 were hospitals, 2 were other not-for-profit agencies. The common thread for all 5 was programs around mental health and substance abuse services. There were no funds essentially for capital projects. However, our application has been moved forward for consideration in the governor's new $300 million capital budget, and we should know by May. And if you remember, our request was for $16 million to modernize the medical surgical rooms and build a new OR suite. Okay. Just if I can, a couple other updates. Mr. Pache will be joining us at our board meeting tomorrow to give an update on the new committee structure that this board is using. We have a pretty robust committee structure as well at the hospital, so now it's figuring out how to make ours work well with yours. So we're going to have an education session for the Board of Managers. Also, at the end of this month, we're going to do a joint sexual harassment training for the 2 boards. It's going to be held in this room. New York State passed a new training requirement, as you probably know, and it's a pretty involved program, so we will have someone from our staff development office lead that session for all of us. And after that training session is done, the Board of Managers will conduct the rest of its business in this chamber that evening. So it'll be a nice opportunity, as I've told Mr. Pache, for some team building and working together with our 2 boards. And lastly, next month I'll be prepared to give you an overview of the strategic planning process that we're undertaking at the hospital. And so this will be your first introduction to that process that will probably last 4.5 months. Are there any questions about anything else?
That sexual harassment is February 27th at 4 o'clock?
4:30.
4:30.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman, that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Questions for Vic? If not, we'll move on to the county manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would first like to thank everybody who attended our JCC ribbon cutting ceremony last week. I was overwhelmed at the attendance that we had and the regional participation by not only folks in Lewis County, but folks throughout the region and leaders throughout the region. So that was really very positive, and the goal of that event was to kick us off with a splash, and I think we certainly did. So thank you to everyone who was able to attend and participate in that event. Tomorrow there is a legislator snowmobile ride. There's a lunch.
No,
It's canceled. It's canceled, okay.
it's postponed to the 21st.
Wow. Okay. Cross that off my list.
What date did she say?
The 21st, Jackie.
Yes.
The 21st, there you go. I spent 3 days last week at NISAC. Excellent 3 days. We are very lucky to have a state association that is as active and has as much influence in Albany as NISAC does. A few things to touch on from that conference. One, as the sheriff mentioned, the legalization of marijuana is absolutely coming our way in 2020. That's the expectation from everyone in Albany. There's very little doubt about that. Indigent defense reform. The sheriff mentioned cashless bail. He did not mention having your attorney at first appearance. There's a lot of things that are coming down the pipe in Albany that are going to be upon the local governments to enact. And NISAC, of course, advocates always that every new mandate comes with funding from the state, but we've all, even me, have been around long enough now to know that that's not always the case. So we need to keep our eye on those things, because even something that, you know, like the voting reform, that comes with costs that, you know, that trickle down to the county and cause our budgets to increase. The 2% property tax cap is very likely to become permanent. That's something that's working its way through both sides of the House in Albany. It's something that we've expected for a while. We've been under the tax cap since 2013, 14. So we know what it's like. But they have not coupled that with relief or reform on things like Medicaid. So Medicaid costs for counties go up at about 5% a year, but our levy is only allowed to increase at 2% a year. So the state continues to squeeze us and force us to make the politically difficult decisions about overriding the tax cap, when we know that a lot of the expenses that force us down that road are really out of our control. The state budget, I did sit on a very informative session about the state budget and what's coming in April. The state should pass their budget. If they do pass a budget, it would be in April. Yesterday there was a press conference with the comptroller and the governor talking about a $3 billion deficit, that tax revenues have not hit their mark this year. There's a lot of discussion on our county manager, county administrator email chain about how exactly those shortfalls will again trickle down into New York's counties. That tends to be the case when we have budget shortfalls in Albany. So things certainly coming our way. That was about it from NISAC, and yeah, that's the end of my report. Thank you, Chairman.
Questions for Ryan? Ryan? Maddie? The county treasurer report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I handed out 2 sets of balances, but I'll only read the 2019 ones. Special legislative contingency starts out at $100,000. We haven't used any. Contingency is $200,000. Capital data processing is $73,956.25. Capital equipment is, the total is $741,206.71. Highway portion is $210,551.78. County portion is $530,654.93. Sales tax, again, I don't have the final figures yet. That will be at the March meeting. But as you can see, we have received $11,269,573.46, which is above budget, and we should be well above budget. Internal Service Fund, we just received the December report today, and it had a positive balance of $217,813.88. So our fund balance is at $4,664,094.96. And that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Maddie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Report of the Finance and Rules Committee for Rule 7.
The Finance and Rules Committee reports they've examined the claims presented for payment in the total amount of $2,592,648.31, and recommend that they be audited and allowed for the amount claimed as signed by the entire committee.
Need a motion to approve that? John, second by Ron. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
First resolution then is to audit and allow the claims for the total amount of $2,596,48.31.
Moved by Brian, second by Tom. Any discussion? Roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Chartrand,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Halter,
Yes.
LaChause,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Howerhand,
Yes.
Mosier,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Dahlhoff.
Yes.
Authorizing county to enter lease agreement with D.S. Berkler and Son.
Moved by Jerry, second by Greg. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing renewal of employment agreement between the Lewis County District Attorney Office and Samuel A. Livingstone, M.D.
Moved by Jerry, second by Dick. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing renewal agreement with John A. Sarando.
Moved by Brian, second by Randy. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing renewal agreement with Mark A. Tuttle.
Moved by Ron, second by Andrea. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
To appropriate funds to the District Attorney Office.
Moved by Ryan, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing purchase lease agreement with Nortrax and John Deere Financial for wheel loader and transportation department.
Moved by John, second by Ron. Discussion. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
To appropriate funds, transportation department.
Moved by Andrea, second by Ron. Discussion. In favor? Opposed?
To appropriate funds, transportation department.
Moved by John, second by Jerry. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Carries.
To transfer funds, transportation department.
Moved by Andrea, second by Tom. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing purchase option between the Village of Copenhagen and County acting on behalf of Lewis County General Hospital for purchase of the Copenhagen Health Center property.
Moved by Jerry, second by Brian. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Appointing member to Lewis County IDA.
Moved by Tom, second by Greg. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
To transfer funds, municipal dues.
Moved by Brian, second by Tom. Discussion. Randy?
One general question, going through all this with all these dues that we keep paying, do we have any idea now actually how much the county pays for dues?
Yeah, we could look it up. Each department has a line item, subscription and dues. We could total those all together pretty easily, yeah. The problem with this one is that our state association knows that we do our budgets in January, but they don't issue the bills until, after, so it doesn't make any sense.
It just seems we have tons of dues and memberships we pay for, and I just was curious if I had an idea on the price.
I don't off the top of my head, but I can find out.
Thank you.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing an agreement between Office for Aging and Osceola Outpost.
Moved by Ron, second by John. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing an agreement between Office for Aging and United Church of Copenhagen.
Moved by Tom, second by Andrea. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing extension amendment to agreement between the county and Department of State for the Brownfield Opportunities Area Implementation Strategy Grant for the Village of Lyons Falls.
Moved by Ron, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing agreement between Sheriff's Department and Timekeeping Systems for Guard 1 Plus support.
Moved by Tom, second by Jerry. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing agreement between Social Services and Graham Whitten agency.
Moved by John, second by Randy. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
To create temporary part-time position in social services.
Moved by Greg, second by Ron. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Authorizing GSS to serve as administrator of the Pratt Northland Careers Here program.
Moved by Randy, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution to appropriate funds, stop DWI.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 55 has been withdrawn for further development of the record. 56, authorizing amendment number 1 to the agreement between the county and NCA Comp for workers' compensation administrative services.
Moved by Ron, second by John. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Approving 2019 resource allocation plan.
Moved by John, second by Andrea. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
One late resolution number 58, authorizing discharge of mortgage, Kendrick and Erica Spence.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Approved resolution.
Do we have any other business? If not, Joe has requested an executive session to update on litigation matters, and HR Director Chris Boyle to discuss employee grievance.
Mr. Chairman, is there any board discussion about our committee structure? There was some talk about wanting to change the date. If we want to do that, we gotta make a motion.
I forget, who was it that, John, you wanted, where
For the
you wanted
committees.
it to Wednesday?
That's what I was wondering if we could.
If
Ain't
you
no
could,
rush.
yeah.
If you wanna go another
Oh,
month,
no,
we
no.
can do it. That's not a big
That's
deal.
fine. I mean, Ron, you're gonna be gone anyway, so it doesn't matter if we leave it Tuesday or Wednesday, according to what you told me today, so.
Well, Wednesday, I mean, on a regular basis?
Yeah, if it's on a regular basis, does that work better for you too?
Wednesday, no, not really, but I mean, it depends on the time. I drive DAV van every Wednesday.
Well, what time is best for you?
Well, what would be the earliest it would be?
Well, our meeting is at 6. What other
PM.
committees are you on?
Finance and,
You're on finance and
Finance and general
rules.
services.
General services is at 2.
You gonna say something?
Everybody's moving, right?
You're talking the third Wednesday?
Yeah.
I said it would, but it won't work for me.
Well, they have
so
youth
it's up to you
bureau.
guys.
At 4, they have youth bureau. Won't that matter?
They can move that.
They could always meet in here if they
Yeah, but some of us are on that.
Yeah.
So we can be in two places at once.
You can.
I can, but not everybody else can.
I'm fine wherever you move it to, so.
So do we have a consensus?
Leave it where it is for now. Yeah, it works.
Wednesday's okay for me, it's like, as long as it's
If I
like
gotta
after 2
step
or
out
3
for an
o'clock.
hour, I'll just step out for an hour.
It's like,
I
I'm
won't
home by
do
then.
this. No problem.
One thing I would like to do is to establish vice chairs. Can we do that as a motion, or do we need to
You
do
don't have
that?
to be that formal about it, you can decide how you want to have that, talk about it, because we talked about at some point then amending, the final document that you passed already when we changed the committee, the standing rules, so decide amongst yourselves if you want to have that, if you want the committee, the chair, to designate a vice chair for each committee, or if you want the committee to establish the vice chair. That's how I think you have to think about it and determine whether or not you want to do that formally, or you can just leave it informally within the committee, so.
So you don't have to really actually
You
have,
don't have to have that.
have a policy established.
Well, once you decide, we should probably add it to the standing rules, I think,
Okay,
unless
so
you're
we can
just gonna
talk
keep
about
it
that.
Well,
informal.
we talk about that in each of our committees.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, motion to enter executive session. Randy, second. Greg, all in favor? Opposed? We're in executive session. 5 minutes.